While we're allowing it to fill up, allowing everybody to come in. Let's do some invitations. Once again, if you don't get the invite, don't feel bad or upset. Like I'm just going down the list straight. What's in front of me, what's behind me, what's around me. This is how we gonna get this done. I want to get into this thought I was having. I was having this thought in between sessions. Building out the days. And I was looking at a lot of posts. When I'm posting, usually when I'm getting up in when I'm coming up in the AM, when I'm getting myself ready, when I'm getting myself set up for the AM, I mean, I'm doing my self-reflection. When I'm doing my self-reflection, today, for example, I was getting the bid, I was getting everything fresh. And usually whenever I'm doing my posts, when I'm making posts, when I'm putting out the information, healing prompts, self-reflecting questions, things that I give to my clients and giving out floodlight, as I like to call it, flooding these Facebook and Instagram, flooding these social media streets with good quality work. I was thinking about inclusion. I was thinking about this term of inclusion. I was having a conversation the other day, and I was thinking about the aspects of inclusion, breaking that loop, understanding the aspects of disengaging from the autopilot, and coming in more into shifting from autopilot into a more autonomous nature. And it made me really sit there and think about the aspects of, like, you've seen the posts, you see the posts, you've seen the commercials, you see ads a lot of times, where there's always this aspect of needing to be included, needing to have an opinion, needing to state an opinion, have an opinion inside of the space, and using opinion as fact. Using opinion as fact a lot of times. Especially like when we think about using opinion as fact. So many people, a lot of times when I'm looking at my aspects of my work, when I'm looking at the aspects of my works, when I'm putting in my work, I'm looking at it from a different angle. I've talked about this. I did a video the other week. I did it live on TikTok. It's on my YouTube channel now. And we got into the aspects of, what did we get into? Yeah, we got into that we touched base with a lot of things. And it made me really think about breaking the inclusion, breaking the need for the inertia, and coming into that true state of that mindfulness. And it made me really think about the aspects of spiritual concepts, using our spiritual concepts, building out our spiritual worlds, building out these spiritual spaces, and getting really back to the basics. I wanted to really get back to the basics, because a lot of times I have a question, and I pose the question at the top of this. How often are you using your spiritual works, your spiritual practices, your spiritual works, the spiritual fundamentals, to avoid your human problems? And it makes you, now I want you to keep following me with this. Think about it like this. We understand, or we come into this understanding, or we should understand, or we're coming into that understanding of your spiritual mirror. One thing that I learned when I first got into the aspects of conjuring, voodoo, hoodoo, a lot of those practices, one of the books, I forgot the name of that book. I haven't skimmed through it in so long. But it's the aspects of aligning these mirrors. In the first part of the book, it's talking about aligning your spiritual mirror with your earthly mirror, or getting everything lined up. And it made me think. It made me really sit there with that aspect of, No matter what I used to, whatever, when similar to the aspects of when I was working a job, working in certain spaces, it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter what I was doing spiritually, because I was so codependent in my human narrative, codependent in my aspects of my traumas. I was so codependent on seeing a change, seeing the change, and not really looking at the aspects of understanding the feeling of when I didn't see that change. So it came into this aspect as I break it down, understanding that we understand that change is inevitable. Understanding that change is inevitable. It's an inevitable factor. It's inevitable. It's gonna happen regardless. Change is gonna happen. Shit gonna move with or without you. And let's put that right there. Shit gonna move with or without you. Period. That's the what. That's the what aspect. A lot of times, because of our narratives, how we were taught, how we were the indoctrination, what we were taught, how our population environments were populated, we have to remember a lot of times we were taught what to think and not how to think. One of my biggest things that I talk to my students, my clients, my mentees, is the aspects of the difference between what to think and shifting into that how to think. See, the how to think is how you deal and integrate with your shadow. The how to think is how you deal with it when you work with your shadow work and you're going through the psychological aspects of yourself. That's how you do that work on that end. That's the aspects of that how to think. That's the aspects of that feeling. That's the aspects of the sight. That's the aspect of what you can't see, but you can feel it, you can hear it, you can feel it, you can hear it, you can touch it, you can taste it. Those other four elements: fire, water, earth, and wind. You can feel the wind. You can feel the wind. You can taste the flow of that water. You can feel and get the touch of that heat from that fire, from that decision. You can feel the breeze of the wind. You can't see the wind, but you know that it's there. So it goes into aspects of what you're investing into, or what you're still trying to invest into when we think about the spirit, the human narratives. Everything you're going to do spiritually is going to show up in narratives that have been unresolved. That energy has to go somewhere. So I don't care if you sit here, I'd say this all the time, if you sit there, you want to meditate all day, you can meditate all day. But the understanding in your meditation is, it's not the meditation where you're going to get your insight. You're not going to get the change that you're looking for in your meditation. It's because remember, to meditate is become fully aware. You're listening. So what are you listening to? If I don't sit down with what I'm hearing during my meditations, I'll use an example. I woke up today. I did my meditation, and I was sitting there, and now I'm inside of a space where whenever I'm thinking about something, I can automatically automate it. It's not on autopilot anymore. I can automate it. You coming into that state of being able to automate your thoughts. That means automatic. When we talk about automation, that attunement, or being able to honor every thought. That means every thought has a place, every thought has a position, every thought is linked to an emotion. You can line that out line by line. Give you the aspects from the spiritual aspect of that. That's when you working with, that's working with the deities, working with your ancestors. That's working with your deities. That's working with the ancestors. That's working with working with that spiritual aspect. You can actually, because this is the aspect, and we don't get into this too, about the aspect, because someone asked me a question in my inbox the other day about the aspects of what do you think free will is? And I'm going to break that down. During the day. But looking at the aspects of understanding that process of whatever I'm working with, I can name it line by line. I can say, if I'm sitting here, give an example. I can sit here, if I'm sitting here and I'm having a thought about in my heart chakra, for example, I'm sitting in my heart chakra and I'm feeling to be very forgiving. I'm feeling to be very forgiving, very nurturing inside of that space. I know that I'm working with my grandmother. I know exactly I'm working with my grandmother. Up to a point after my pops transition last year, whenever my pops would come through inside of that space, it would be the feelings of resentment. It would be a feeling of resentment or that state of that unresolved, that disapproval, that disassociation. I knew I was working with my pops. On either end of that spectrum, I got to work with that energy. So if I'm feeling some type of way, like I don't want to think that thought, that's just letting me know. Remember when I tell you, whenever you're triggered, that's letting you know when you're not present. That's letting you know where you got to put that work in. What work you got to put into that space is going to be based on the impact of said change. Because the change is going to happen with or without you. But that impact is based on whether I'm being mindful, we're going to simplify it, being mindful, or I'm just following the state of inertia. When you think of inertia, is that state of following that pattern or that behavior. That means if I'm sitting here having a conversation with my pops, for example, it's going to be, am I allowing myself to feel the anger, the resentment, whatever it is, or am I going to give him honest one-on-one time? How can I give him one-on-one time in my space, in my timeline? See what I'm saying? How can I give him honor in my space, in my timeline? I felt my pops this morning. Felt my pops and my father, because there's a story. It's in my previous lives and lectures that I've done on my channel. How can I use that energy? Today was my day, for example, for me to cut my hair, line my beard up, condition my locks, wash my locks. That's why I'm wrapped up right now. Also protecting my energy. Get myself lined up, condition my beard, wash my beard. It took me back to the memories of when my pops, every other Sunday, when between all the way up until about the 8th, 9th, all the way up to about the 8th or 9th grade in this space, I remember every other Sunday, my pops would cut me and my brother's hair. Every other Sunday. No matter what house we were in, when we stayed in one house, he pulled that stool out, sit in the middle of the living room, turn on the light, pull out the clippers, start cutting our hair. No matter what it was, that was the most intimate time for us inside of that space. That was an intimate moment inside of that space. So for me to honor that thought, this is how we understand honoring that thought, and break this need for, I'm gonna get deeper into breaking that need for inclusion. It's bringing myself into a state of making it automated. How am I becoming intimate with that energy in that space? Everything in that process becomes automated. How I lay my clippers out, if I gotta oil if it's been a month, first of every month, I gotta oil the clippers, I gotta oil my clippers, make sure everything's clean, make sure the towel's sitting down. Everything I'm doing now becomes the aspects of that ritual working with that energy. Everything I'm doing inside of that space is now intentional. So everything I'm doing inside of that space is working with my energy. You get what I'm saying? I'm breaking that loop of inclusion, because before that point, let me sip my tea real quick. Best tea to drink is with shroom water in it. Steep your tea with shroom water. Best water ever. But before that point, sitting in that space, I'm learning where I separated from myself. I'm learning where I separated from said process. I'm learning how I separated from that process. Because up to that point in time, up until about the ninth and the 10th grade, where everything went crazy. I'm in and out. I'm acting out at school and all of these things. Those memories that are coming up from reaction from a point before that point, all of that's coming up as I'm sitting inside of that space. So the separation, with that separation, to remain included, in that state of inclusion with that said energy, that emotional energy, I go to the barbershop. So now I'm at the barbershop. Now, if you're a dude, if you're a guy, we know what happens at the barbershop. You know, they arguing about sports. Somebody's arguing, somebody's selling plates, somebody doing some wild. The energy is a certain level of energy inside of that space. There's a certain level of energy inside of that space. And for you to fit inside of said space, you got to be on a certain frequency of energy. No matter what you're doing inside of that space, there has to be a certain level of energy in order for you to even interact inside of that space. Even if you, like for me, for example, even me going to the barbershop, 9 times out of 10 when I go to the when I was going to the barbershop, had my headphones in, I'm on my phone. Headphones in, listening to fucking Jay, whatever I'm listening to. I'm not interacting with that energy until I go sit with my barber. I sit back, we might have a little bit of whatever might be inside of that space. I'm saying that to say this. That was me replacing the intimate space and time with me and my pops when my pops would cut my hair. Because every time my pops would cut my hair, we wouldn't talk. There would be no conversation. There would be no banter conversation. So it's something that I didn't learn. The main thing or the main reason we think about energetically while you're going into these spaces is because there's something there for you to learn. There's something for you there to learn. There's an aspect of yourself that you're going there to learn to. That's why you're going to that space. There's something of you there that's necessary for you to learn. Same thing with your job. Same thing with everything that populates your space. But the thing that can get us stuck inside of that space or get stuck in is we're looking at it from a state of trying to stay included. I remember going to the barbershop and everybody talking about sports. I wasn't watching fucking Sports Center before I came to the barbershop. I don't watch Sports Center. I wasn't watching sports. So I didn't fit inside of that space. So I couldn't say nothing about those type of conversations. I couldn't find myself inside of those conversations. So it's like, I don't go there to talk about sports. I go there to get my hair cut and go to get out. But inside of that space is something for me to learn. Something for me to learn inside of that space. How to interact with energy. How to work with energy. Everything happens inside of that space. So when I came out, once I learned that, it wasn't until later on inside of that space where I found a barber that I really rock with. I found a barbershop where I really rock with. And I remember there was this one dude, he was conscious. He was a conscious dude. He was conscious. He had all the adornments of consciousness. He had the ankh, he was conscious. He was conscious. He fit the profile and the look. I never got my hair cut from him. I got my hair cut by him once or twice. Got my hair cut from him for once or twice. But I noticed every time I got my hair cut from him, after I would leave from the barbershop, my energy would be off. My energy would be off. I would be argumentative. I was more susceptible to being argumentative when I would go to work. I was more enticed to seeing if some shorty looked at me inside of that space. I was more attracted to that said aspect and focus being inside of that space and not really knowing why. This is when we think about, oh my God, I had some intrusive thoughts into the aspects of that why. It wasn't until he moved, there was 2 different shops. He went to the other shop, they called the other shop like the boot camp. He went down to the other shop and I was sitting with my other barber. His energy was different. Sitting with him, we have a conversation, we laugh, talk, have a couple conversations, kick the shit, things of that nature. I noticed that after that space, after I would leave that chair out of his chair, leave that space, my energy was different. I could understand, oh shit, my energy is a little bit different. I have more bop in my step. I'm moving a little different. I'm thinking a little differently. It wasn't until after COVID happened and everything was shut down and he was cutting hair in his he was staying with one of his friends, and he would set the whole garage up to be his barbershop. That was the first time that we had that was the first time that we had had an actual conversation. That was the first time we had a conversation talking about investments, things of that nature, things that we could not discuss, things that, not that we couldn't discuss them in the barbershop, but that environment and the energy inside of that space wasn't meant to have that conversation. Now, I'm saying all that to bring it down to this point of this. You have to understand, in that state of inclusion, ultimately in any state of inclusion, when you're going into a space, you have to understand that every conversation that you engage in, every space that you engage in, whether you fully, it doesn't matter whether you fully jump into that shit, don't matter if you fully engaged into it, you got something to say, or you don't have something to say, your body's gonna pick that up regardless. Your auric field's gonna pick that up regardless, period. And it's gonna connect to something that's already present within you. But if I don't understand how to set up, if I don't understand my energy, I become more susceptible to what happens inside of that space. Think about how tense you feel when you go into certain spaces and you move into certain, think about that. You feel tense, you waiting for certain shit to happen. Your trauma start kicking in because now you're moving in a state of being an autopilot. All I knew was every 2 weeks, I'm going to go get my hair cut. I knew that every 2 weeks I get paid. The day before, I knew I was subscribing to every day when I go to the barbershop. When I'm going to the barbershop, I know the day before I go to the barbershop, I get paid. I know the day before I go to the barbershop, I get paid. I got paid on Wednesdays. I go to the barbershop on Thursday. Sometimes I wouldn't go on Thursday, I end up going on Friday. That's depending on how my schedule was looking. See how my schedule was looking. But inside of that space, every single time for myself, I'm getting keys. I'm like, damn, I hate going to the barbershop so late because now I got to go straight to work, and I got hair on my neck. I got hair on me. I wasn't able to wash my hair. At this time I was growing my beard out. I wasn't able to wash my beard. I wasn't able to take care of myself in it. I wasn't able to take care of the aftercare, the afterthought. I wasn't able to honor the afterthoughts. I wasn't able to honor them. I wasn't able to honor the afterthoughts. I didn't build that space out. The biggest thing when it comes to us working with our spiritual energy, when you're working with your spirit, working with that your spiritual aspects, is where's that energy going? Where are you building it out to? It does me no good. It does me no good to do a whole fucking money ritual if my money's still going into old accounts. It does me no good to do, I want to have abundance and prosperity if my money's still going into the same bank. I don't get Bank of America anymore, but going into Bank of America, going into Wells Fargo, doesn't do it. It's going to keep doing the same thing. It's going to keep burning out in the same way. All because I'm still stuck in that state of inclusion. You know what I'm saying? I still have the same human problems, quote unquote. I'm still navigating to avoid the same human problems. I'm getting to the root, because work with this. You only can go as far as you're unresolved. You only can go as far as you're unresolved in any situation. You only can go as far as you're unresolved. Because every time that you sit there and you meditate, or you want to go do shrooms, you want to smoke, whatever you want to do to take yourself into that space, you want to pour libations, you only are going to go as far as your own unresolved. Until you resolve and get to the aspects of that root, you ain't going to get any further. You're going to have that feeling because of you living in that state of inertia. You're going to keep having this feeling for yourself of the impending doom, the impending pain, the impending damage. It's always going to be this impeding feeling every time that you do something. Now, here's the key. Up until this point, as we drinking our coconut water, up until that point, we didn't have that space. We had the space for the historic, getting our history back, who we are. We created and built the space out for the historic. We created and built out the space for the sciences, the occult sciences, the metaphysical sciences. We had those spaces. We built those spaces out. One of the biggest things that I've came to notice when my shit kicked in for me, and really as I was doing my work, was none of that got to me. And what I mean by that is none of that struck me to talk about or to speak. None of it fit. None of it fit. Every time I was inside of that space, I would do the rituals. I would study. I would I would go get the book or whatever, go get the books, go get the PDF, the information, but none of it hit me. And it made me have to sit, it put me in a position to sit with that feeling. Remember, sitting with that feeling. It was similar to the feeling of when I was going to church and I would see everybody holding their hands out, or I would see everybody saying, allow the power of Jesus to wash over you. And I wouldn't feel anything. I wouldn't feel shit. I wouldn't feel anything. I'm like, am I doing it right? Am I doing this shit right? I don't feel like I'm doing it. I'm not getting what they're getting. You feel what I'm saying? I'm not getting what they're getting. I was in that space of trying to feel included. I was trying to feel inclusive. The only time that it actually worked for me was it was attached to something of my unresolved, my trauma. So the moment that I was at work and I'm mad at work all day, and now I call myself, now I'm gonna, you know what, man, when I go home, man, I'm about to go read. I'm tired of these niggas in here ain't having no type of conversation. They're having nigga need conversations and bitch need conversations. I'm gonna go home and read and watch Bobby Hemmett, watch a lecture. I go watch the lecture. I get that intellectual buzz, go to bed. I watch the lecture, get that intellectual feeling, go to bed. I read that book, get that intellectual buzz, do something with it, get that buzz, and then it burned the fuck out. Because I was looking for inclusion. You cannot look for inclusion before you assess where you've been separated. You cannot look for inclusion until you understand where you've been separated and why you have been separated. Not the general sense of we was this. No, your bloodline, your aspects of yourself. One of the biggest things where it comes into this, when we come back to what I was saying earlier on in this, the aspects of we now look for opinions to validate. We look for a level of validation. You look for inclusion, or you look for a level. We looking for that level of validation. We look for that level of validation. Now you going up and down your timeline on Facebook, and anybody talking about they, them, they doing this to us, they trying to do this, any conspiracy, that's what you clicking, that's what you chiming into. So then you go back to work. Here's the key. Now you go back to work. Everybody at work is they're talking energetically about the same shit that you stuck on. Energetically, they stuck on the same shit you stuck on. That's why it fucking irritates the fuck out of you. That's why it irritates the shit out of you at work. You saying they ain't talking about nothing conscious or spiritual. They're talking about getting some fucking pussy. They're talking about trying to get some money. They're talking about trying to get ahead in life. You doing the same shit. Because when you go home and you sit there in front of your altar that you haven't built to yourself, you go sit in front of your altar and you go sit there the same way, and we'll go deep into that key, the same way you sit there and you interacting with your Anubis statue, your Set statue, your fucking Baba Lao statue, whatever statues, is the same way when you were little, whenever you got irritated, whenever you got triggered, the same way when you were little, when you got triggered and you ran off in your room and you sat there and started drawing out pictures, and you sat there and you were starting there playing with your action figures, or you went outside and you rode your bike. You're still in that state of inertia. You're still in a state of autopilot. Since you're in that state of autopilot, you're not investing. You're not investing into it. You're not investing. What are you in? You don't even know what you're using to buy into that anyway. Why did that connect to you? Now you watching TV. I don't watch TV no more. But every time I turn on TV, they're talking about this, school shooting and things of that nature. Okay, so you start watching TV. But now you on social media, and you're using an example. Everybody talking about Black China and all these shorties and chicks coming into their change, like seeing they need to let go of some things and change with themselves. What most people are going to say is, see, they've been ran through. Now they want to. You've been ran through too. You've been ran through too. You've been ran through. Your traumas keep running through your ass. Your traumas keep running through your ass in that state of being, and you're not doing anything. You're not learning those aspects. You're not learning them. So now you're stuck. This is how you get stuck in that loop of trying to be included with something. Every time you separate, every time you come into that state of the separation where you have to sit with yourself, when you got to sit in that state of that where things are separating, that's when that feeling starts coming up, that imminent doom. Oh my God, if I go too far, what's going to happen? If I go too far, what's going to happen? You too worried about the what, and you ain't looking at the how. You ain't looking at your how and your why. You're still stuck on the what. If I go too far, what's going to happen? What do you want to happen? I don't care. What do you want to happen? You know what I'm saying? What do you want to happen? Maybe I should start looking at this as how I end up in that separation is giving you the chance to look at how I keep ending up inside of this space. Why? What is the root cause? I don't know how to sit with the root cause. That means now I need to come into a space that can teach me the root, that can give me the game of the root, give me actual, it's not giving you the opinion. And this is the key why we keep getting stuck in inclusion. It's not looking for the opinion to make my fact. It's not looking for the opinion to make my fact. It's not subscribing to the opinion to prove that, okay, cool, that's why I'm in this position that I'm in. Yeah, it's because they do this, and they do that, and they do this, and this happens, and this keep happening. That's not why you're in that state of separation. That is the after effect. That's the aftermath of why you're in that space of separation. Until you understand the roots of that and start, okay, I need to sit inside of that space. I need to stop trying to master my trauma, because that's ultimately what you're trying to do. You're trying to master your trauma or take dominion over your trauma or your unresolved. How can you master what is unresolved? How can you master what is unresolved? How does that work? How can I master what is unresolved? You feel what I'm saying? Skipping over my human problems. This is when you come into the space, because I remember being in that space of every single time, man, I ain't got time to meditate, man, I got bills. I ain't got time to sit down and read. I got bills I gotta pay and all these types of things. I'm giving myself the answer that I need. But because I'm not getting what I want, I kick it out. You kick it back into the shadow. Everything you need is inside of your shadow. This is when everybody use that generalized, everything's within. But the moment somebody asks the question, what's within? Because I asked that damn question. What's within though? The only thing that's within me is issues I don't understand. I'm giving myself the answer that I need, but I'm not getting the result that I want. Because of the answer that I need, I don't want to listen to, I don't want to sit with, I don't want to learn it. I'm going to use it the same way I've used everything else. The same way that I define every other aspect that populates my environment. My need for it, whether it's indirect or it's direct. See that key of understanding that indirect versus that direct. It doesn't matter if I'm not subscribing to a side. It's not about me what side I subscribe to, what opinion I subscribe to. It's the why and how it's understanding that if I don't subscribe to it directly, I'm still going to subscribe to it in some way, shape, or form indirectly. I'm still going to use my energy, still going to be used in that space indirectly. If I do not subscribe to these niggas out here, if I do not subscribe to niggas always talking about everything from, man, I can't be no friends with no chick, chicks is this chick. If I don't subscribe to it directly, how do I subscribe to it indirectly? In that aspect of that, how do I subscribe to it indirectly? Dig what I'm saying? How do I subscribe to that shit indirectly? Because even though I don't subscribe to the way that they're saying it and what they're doing, I'm indirectly subscribing to it by the way of the relationship. I remember sitting with myself. I actually had a recap of it on my walk yesterday. And I was like, every relationship that I was in, I felt that it needed certain things. Every relationship that I got in, I thought that the relationship came with certain keys. And then I called it reciprocity. When in reality, it was regurgitation. I called it reciprocity, but it was really regurgitation. It was the regurgitative state of staying in a regurgitative state of action. See, the thing that gets you stuck, one of the biggest things when I'm working with my clients is breaking down where you have regurgitative actions based on your behaviors and your patterns. Based on those regurgitative patterns. My behaviors and my patterns lead to a state of regurgitation. If I do this, this needs to happen. If I do this, this needs to happen. If I take if me and Shorty talk for a couple of weeks and I take her out on a date and we go get some drinks, depending on how much I'm about to spend, that's how much what she need to come off with. I'm exchanging law of even equivalent exchange. I'm giving her the aspects of a resource. I'm giving her access to a resource. So she got to come off with something back to me. But I'm not looking, this is the aspect when you get stuck in that physical inclusion loop. You feel that, so now inside of my space, what populates inside of my space? A certain level. Inside of that space, when I was taking shorties out, when I'm getting to know shorty, taking shorties out, I followed the same exact pattern every single time. I looked for the same exact behaviors every single time. I looked for the same exact type of chick every single time. Every single time. If I was in a state of, I'm money hungry, I'm hustling, I'm making money, I need a shorty beside me to know how to make money and make moves like me, I would find and populate my space with shorties that did the same thing. The have or the have not, the doing or the not doing, or the do's and the don'ts. But at no point in time was I looking at, in the true aspects of the intimacy, was who that person was. Because I was not looking at who I was. I wasn't accepting of who I was. I wasn't acknowledging who I was. I was acknowledging myself through what I was doing. So if I had a job, I'm a hard worker. If I had a crib, nigga, I got a house, I got a crib, I got this, this, and this. I ain't got no kids. Things of that nature. I remember for a long period of time for myself, I remember every single day at work, I would just start singing out of nowhere. Got that no kid money every fucking day. I would say I got that no kid money. Still got no kid money. Build it, populate my space with that aspect of that space. Everybody in my space looks sad as shit because they got kids. I ain't sad, I ain't got kids. So what am I doing in turn? What is my subconscious recording? What's my subconscious gonna record? Nigga, no children means you gonna be happy. Not having kids, you're gonna be happy. You gonna be, all right, cool. That's what my subconscious records. That's what my subconscious recalls. But here's the, go deeper into that key. Why was my subconscious mind so susceptible to accepting that thought? Why was my subconscious mind susceptible to accepting that thought? Now I got to go back to my childhood. I have to understand my pops. And I got to understand my pops before he took on the title of pops. I got to understand my mother before she became my mother. Before she took on the title of being my mother. I have to separate on the other end, because everything you must do in balance. I must now separate my definition of what a mother should be, my definition of what a father should have been, my definition of what siblings and family should have been. I must separate that definition to understand the why and the how they became inside of that space. And that's a process. That's processing. That's when you process the emotions. That's when you're able, when you remove everything, that's when you're able to process. Your value, your true value is when you have nothing. That's why we think that one saying, when a man has nothing, when a woman is tested, or your feminine aspect is tested, is nurtured, is provided, God is nurturing, based on a man not having nothing, and a man is tested, or your masculine aspect is tested when it has everything. What is your everything? What is everything that you had inside of that space? I had the car, had the whip, had the crib, but I didn't understand basic maintenance. I didn't understand basic maintenance of a crib. All I knew is what I saw. All I could subscribe to is what I saw. I saw my pops get up early as hell in the fucking morning and either walk or take one of the days he would get the work truck and take that shit to work. I see my mom get up, get us ready for school. When we get back to the house, my mom is cooking dinner. That's all I saw. I didn't see the in-between, but I heard the in-between. Those are those conversations. Just when we start sitting, those are those conversations between my, like for example, my mom and my pops. And my pops would say something about my mother based on what he would see and what he wasn't seeing, and my mom's reaction based on the same thing. What I was indoctrinated in is based on seeing shit. Only based on what's being seen, only based on what's being heard, and not being able to process the feeling and emotion. That's the space that I now create when I work with my clients. In that space, we have to sit inside of that space where that feeling actually is, in that center space. How am I still including myself in these actions over and over and over again? How do I keep ending up in this position? Why every fucking year, at the end of the fucking year, do I end up inside of that space? The longer that you ain't dealing with that, then you start seeing the overlaps inside of the space. When we think about, oh, it's tax season, going ball out, it's tax season. Oh, it's summertime. Oh, we got to go to bike week. We got to go to Miami. We got to celebrate. Oh, it's my birthday. You know, it's my born day. You know, it's my death day. We know we got to celebrate and drink. What are you celebrating? What are you celebrating? What are you celebrating? You spent $2,000-$3,000 on your birthday. To do what? To do what? To drink? So you went to go drink? You went to smoke? Pop pills? Whatever your fancy was? So you can go get laid? That's all you did. You're stuck in a state of autopilot. You're stuck in a state of autopilot. But on the higher end, I'm gonna give you an example. I was watching a video yesterday. I was watching some videos yesterday as I was winding down from my day. And I was sitting there, and it was like the guy he was talking about, you can write off your birthday. He was like, you can write off your birthday. And it was $1 million worth of game. I forgot the name. I forgot the episode. It was $1 million worth of game. You know, with Gilly. If you don't know, with Gilly and his cousin. And they were talking about the aspects of writing off your birthday. And he was like, you know what? If you have your company set up, you can make it a business meeting. You can go get the venue. You can go get the venue, the Airbnb, the venue, whatever it is. Some of the drinks or some of the drinks that you're gonna have, the food that you're gonna get catered for your birthday, the food you're gonna get catered, and like now you take attendance. That means everybody that you inviting to your party at a certain point of time, they're your business partners. So you got a homeboy that does a podcast. You got a homeboy that whatever is inside of your space, your network of your people, most of your people, everybody around you is in that state of being a business partner. And then y'all take the first hour. It ain't even got to be that long. You take the first hour of your birthday party, and you can label it as a mastermind meeting. This was an annual mastermind meeting. And he was talking about the aspects, social media marketing, financials, all that aspects. And then after you're done with that, you have the party. So now you celebrating. That made me think, oh, it's another way of bringing myself and connecting and aligning in the present. Now, if I saw that video 7 years ago, I would be triggered as shit. If I saw that video 7 years ago, I would have been triggered as shit. Because the first thing I would have tried to do, stuck in that step of inclusion, 1 second. The first thing that I would have tried to do inside of that space was try to sell the idea. I would try to sell the idea. And how would I try to sell the idea? I'm looking at the people that are around me, and I'm trying to have that conversation. Hey, yo, man, I was watching this video the other day. And I saw this video and it was talking about, writing off your birthday. Right? And then now everybody's interest is peaked, like writing off your birthday. Yeah, writing off your birthday. Like being able to like actually get the venue. All I would do ultimately was regurgitate what I heard in the video. All I would do is regurgitative action to my present behaviors and patterns. I cannot use regurgitative action to change, to acknowledge and assess my behaviors and patterns. No one around me at that point in time had a legal business. No one around me had a legal business, LLC, corporation, anything set up. We was out there, we was hustling. We were hustling. So yeah, we can have an event of that nature, but what we gonna talk about? What are we gonna talk about? During that event, what are we gonna talk about? How to get more, how to get more, the plug? What are we gonna talk about? So then I be triggered, information going to the shadow for a later day. Information going to the shadow for a later day. Can't use it. I'm not present. Can't use it, not present. Kick it out. Now I'm angry at everybody around me, man. Man, y'all don't want to expand your minds. Y'all don't want to grow. Y'all don't want to. That sound familiar? Y'all sound familiar? Give you an example. I'm gonna give you another aspect of an example. Yesterday, I was doing my shit. And I had a conversation with my mother. And it was a very uplifting conversation. Because my mother was talking about some things. And I broke down one of the things that I get in my clients. I was like, Mom, you need to write a letter to yourself. The feeling for me to be able to express and explain and simplify, because I'm present, therefore I can observe and listen to the space. I could tell my mother, Mom, you need to write a letter to yourself. Write out all of these aspects to the letter. Write all those aspects out. And as I'm listening, my mom replies, and I'm hitting certain key notes. Grandmother kick in, my mom's mom kick in, my grandmother kicks in. She was like, yeah, because your grandmother used to tell us about stop trying to hold things in and worry about things, because all it does is shows up on your face. And then she went into the space. She was like, yeah, like when it was my aunts and my mom, they all went to an event. It was like a sisterhood event. They were like celebrating their sisterhood. And my mom was like, when she looked at one of my aunts or some of my aunts, she could look at their face and she could see that they can see like they were holding on to something. They can see it on their face. Even though my mother could not explain, I understood. Even though my mother could not fully explain and put together the words in a certain way that back in the day I would have tried to look for, like, damn, she don't understand it. I had to listen to what she was saying. My mother was in alignment at that moment with what I was saying. My mother was not defensive. Where my mother would become defensive, I helped her and aided her. Okay, cool. But yeah, Mom, listen to this. Listen real quick. I heard exactly what you said. I'm gonna put that right here, but listen to this. Kept going through the flow of the process. I was stepping into the state of reciprocity. I move to become present is to move in the state of reciprocity. To become present is to become present with oneself is to come into the state of reciprocity. Understanding what reciprocity truly is. I wasn't in a state of regurgitation. I was in a state of reciprocity. I was becoming present with who I am now. It wasn't based on the basis of what I did or what I did or what I done in the past. It was bringing me and my mother having this conversation in the present state. Even though I could see where my mother was in a state of regurgitative action, the most important aspect for myself in being present was allowing her to be in that state. Allowing her to be inside of that state. Because her being in that regurgitative state, the regurgitative actions, she was becoming my teacher. She was becoming my teacher. She was nurturing my present. She was nurturing my present. She was challenging my perspective. Reciprocity. She was challenging my perspective. She was challenging me. So now I can go back and forth seamlessly from being the student, and that's listening, taking in that information, taking in that guidance. And now from taking in that guidance, now I can provide the leadership, the knowledge to that information. Without me going off the other end or going on a tangent, I can remain present. See, that's that key. Breaking that inclusion. Breaking the inclusion. It's like if somebody says, yo, you should have been there. Why? Because, man, the hose is out. You got to be honest with yourself. Like, you know your energy. You know how your energy works. Do you know your energy? Why would you go to that type of space? Like, think about that. Why would I put myself inside of that position, set position? Even if I could go to that position, I don't fit. See, this is the key when we come into the aspect of being present and really knowing and understanding when it's time for you to leave outside of a space. Until you learn how to become present, you can't learn how to maneuver because you haven't learned the lessons in what it is to maneuver. You might go to a space. Let's say, for example, you might go to a family event. And you have issues with speaking up for yourself. I had issues in speaking up for myself. But I had to understand, I'm going to break down the aspects of the root to me speaking up for myself. The root to me speaking up for myself and where that was rooted at. Because if I go to a family event or if I go to a party, somebody in there being loud as shit, they speaking up for themselves. They're speaking up for themselves. But what is that rooted in? They seem very, very angry. Why do they seem so angry though? Now I'm just being real. So they call it, I'm just being real. I'm just being real. Ain't nobody gonna come at me. 9 times in most spaces, I'm sitting there talking to myself, or I'm sitting next to somebody with me. I'm like, nobody said that. Nobody said anything to them. Why do they feel that impending need, that impending obsession to project their anger, project what they're calling anger out into that space? Why? Where is it coming from? Wait, let me sit with this. Let me sit with that with myself. Why do I feel the need to question this? See, now I'm becoming present. Reciprocity. Why do I feel that aspect of, why do I feel the need to even question this? That's when you're sipping from that state of regurgitative, the regurgitative answer, the regurgitative action is everybody sitting there talking and giving their opinions. Oh, he just mad because he just mad because his ex is here. Or he just mad because of this, or she just mad because of this. And then you accept that answer and you're like, okay, cool. Well, then you try to go, then you want to go be, I'm going to go save somebody. And then you go try to help them with that. Like, yo, man, so what you really going through? But since we went on regurgitative action, you already have set in your mind a script. You already have the dialogue planned for one script. You have the dialogue planned for one script. And not really listening. You're not really listening to the space. You're not really listening. Because you're looking for those cues, and I've talked about these. Talked about these cues before. You're looking for certain cues for you to respond, to react. You're looking for certain cues in the live. You're looking for certain cues in that live. You're looking for certain cues from this person for you to be able to react. So you can keep reverting to your old behaviors and your patterns. See, you just keep. Man. Niggas ain't really real out here. Then now you trying to sit here. Now you sitting there absorbing this nigga talk. This nigga went for 35 fucking minutes, 45 fucking minutes, talking about his issue, like venting to you, and you absorbed all of that energy. You absorbed all of that pain. You absorbed all of that emotionally. You absorbed all of that emotional rawness from this individual. You took in all of this regurgitation of emotional rawness from that individual. So now, what do you do next? You're not going to question it. 9 times out of 10, when we take in emotional rawness from another person, what's the first thing that you want to go do? I can help this person. Let me go get the information that in regards to that. So now it's an afterthought. Remember that aftermath, the aftercare. So now you went and, because I remember doing it even when I was studying aspects of, I'm a whole psychology, my major is in psychology and business. I remember to go get the information, thinking that I was helping, but I was only helping the surface. I was only helping the surface level of the intent. I wasn't really doing any work. Because I knew where to go. You know what I'm saying? I knew where to go. I knew I could go get. I've been waiting to use this book right here. I've been waiting to use this, and now I'm bringing it to that space. I'm bringing that information into that space. So now, regurgitative action. To feel included, now I'm going to impose on this individual. Now I'm imposing on this person. How am I imposing on that person? It's not that what I'm saying is not what I'm saying that's imposing. It's not what I'm doing that is imposing. It's not what I have that is imposing. It is my energetic aspects of who I am that is imposing. It's my energetic makeup that's now imposing. You dig what I'm saying? Because I only can go as far as my unresolved. So I only can connect based on my unresolved. Where I have not resolved, or where I have not sat with myself, where I have not become transparent with myself, this question that I'm going to pose to this person, whatever answer that they give to me, my subconscious has to pull something in order for me to sit inside of that space. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody, in the clear, concise description of that energy is, it's an unresolved masculine wound, father wound, something about their father, something about their mother, family members, a trauma they haven't gotten over. All I can do is hyperimpose by first stating, and I'm gonna give you an example. I'm gonna hyperimpose myself, exposing myself in that space to gain understanding. I'm going to project myself into that space. I'm gonna project myself into that space. I'm gonna give you this example. I'm not seeing them as them. I'm not seeing them as them as who they are. I'm looking at what they're doing. I'm listening to what they're doing. I'm listening to what what they're trying to do. But I'm not looking at this person for who they are. So in order for me to fit inside of this space, I must impose my unresolved self inside of that space. I must attach to it in some way. I'm not present. I'm not present. This is when we think about that state of when you start regurgitating. You can tell one of your homeboys, one of your homegirls, somebody that you fucking associating with, you can give them gems. Key fucking game and fucking gems. You feel what I'm saying? But they don't receive it. They don't receive it in the way that you receive. Remember, you're projecting yourself into that space. They're not receiving it the way you want them to receive it. They're not getting excited. They're not asking you questions. They're not giving you that aha moment that you're looking for. They're not giving you that. What they're giving you is emotional. What they're giving you to is regurgitation. So 9 times out of 10, what are you looking for inside of that space? What do you look for inside of that space? You're looking for key identifiers to make it like you said something or did something inside of that space. You're looking for key identifiers. You excited because they repeated it back to you. You're looking for them to parrot back to you. You don't want them to ask any questions because the question is going to challenge you to become present. Yeah, y'all don't understand how Jesus is detrimental to our community. Because you got to think about it like this, and all you can do is regurgitate. Because you have no personal, you don't have any personal aspects of who you are outside of that narrative. You don't have no personal aspects to yourself outside of that narrative. And even once then you come into the state of intellectualized aspect, because then you go back, okay, cool. Because this is what you get stuck in, that inclusive loop. Every time you go get some information, you can't wait to go share it. Every time you get a download, every time you get that gem, you can't wait to go disperse it amongst the world, disperse it amongst the community. You can't wait to do that part. You can't wait to do it. But you don't sit with it. 90% of the shit that you're going to get, 90% of the reason why you keep getting the information is because it's for you. 90% of that, most of the information that you receive, until you have resolved issues with yourself, resolved those human narratives and got to the roots of those human problems and those human narratives, all of the information is for you first. But since you get trigger happy, you want to go shoot it off and go regurgitate it. You ain't sitting with it. You haven't broken it down. You haven't came up with concise examples that you established with yourself. You haven't built a foundation for it. You haven't created a structure to live by. Your disciplines don't match it. That's why they're looking at you. Because energetically, your disciplines don't match that action. That's like, use the example. That's like if you sitting there and you 5'3" and you 270 pounds, and you trying to tell somebody that you went plant-based. You plant-based and you vegan and you eating healthy now. You're spending more time in regurgitating, trying to get the validation, than actually taking the time to actually sitting with and creating the disciplines that match that information, that bring you into a level of balance with that information. You spending more time over there than sitting with that information and resolving those aspects. Because someone asked that question, because every fucking time, guaranteed, you gonna get an answer that you don't want. Man, you don't literally look plant-based and vegan, because I mean, nigga, I've seen based on what's being seen, I've seen vegans. I've seen motherfuckers that are plant-based, and every vegan, like Dr. Sabi, they looked like they were frail. They were all small and all frail. Boy, you look kind of thick. You look thick. Sis, you look thick. You can't even explain why. You can't even sit with the fact of the aspect that once you became plant-based, you didn't really become plant-based. You didn't really become vegan. You didn't really become a vegetarian. You didn't become that aspect. You took on the attributes. You took on the attributes so you can regurgitate. You switched out eating McDonald's burgers and you went to the grocery store and you went in the freezer section and you went and got the gardenia patties, or you went and got the Impossible burgers, or you went and got the Beyond Meat. So you just replaced one thing for another to say, like, yeah, now I'm plant-based. You didn't do the work. You didn't do the research. The same amount of research that you didn't do checking on McDonald's, but what did you usually do? The only thing that you went off of, most times we go off of, what you went off was somebody said something about McDonald's having human meat. Somebody saying something about McDonald's and the poison inside of the food. So all you did was regurgitate that information. But then you replaced it with another processed meat. You dig what I'm saying? From the same space. You went and replaced another processed aspect for another process. You went and bought into another process to give yourself a false sense of progression. Because you didn't progress any. You still wake up the same. All you did was replace your breakfast sausage with plant-based sausage. You didn't really do anything because you haven't processed it. You don't know what your body needs. You don't understand the simplified key that on the simplest aspect of terms, on the simplest state of the terms, every thought pairs with a certain emotion. You don't understand the digestion process. That's a key aspect of when you're eating that food. You don't understand how your body digests because you don't understand your emotional intelligence is still at a certain level. So that's because you replaced McDonald's double quarter pounder with cheese and you ain't got a single patty gardenia patty or a single burger Impossible burger, and you use the same ingredients. Oh, I just replaced this cheese for that cheese. I replaced this cheese with that cheese. I use plant-based, so it's the same. But you're still feeding the same emotional state. You're still feeding the same emotional need. You're still feeding the same emotional value. You're still stuck. Now, guess what happens? What manifests in your environment? Now that you're against McDonald's and you're against eating fast food and you're against McDonald's and you're against wearing this and you're against wearing that, now you over here in this space, what are you going to attach? What are you going to attach to? Motherfuckers that are saying, yo, I don't wear that and I don't do this, and when I wear this, I don't wear that. We need more black owned things of that nature. Now you stuck. Now you went from one savior to another. You went from one martyr being McDonald's, being the martyr for your emotional needs, to slutty vegan being the martyr for your emotional needs. Dig what I'm saying? You went from the Church of Christ or Church of Latter-day Saints as your emotional field to them niggas standing on the corner dressed like fucking Power Rangers as your emotional fix. You went from your angry uncle and father figure in your life to tuning into a Bobby Hemmett video carrying what you perceive as that same emotional energy. So even when you watch the video, watch the lecture, it's in the past. Think about something think about the simplicity of thinking about the fact that Bobby Hemmett started lecturing in 1995, 1996. His videos didn't become available on YouTube until 3, 4, 5 years after YouTube became a thing. So it was still in the past. So every video that you were watching from 95 and 96, you were probably watching in the year 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2010, 2015, 16. So by the time you got to the videos of his later works, when you got to the videos of his later works, panic jumped in. Panic, now you seeing panic videos. So then now you're going back to try to eliminate, you're going back to make yourself inclusive only to your past. Because all of that information from the surface level only is inclusive to your past. From what there's everything from what you see, how they're dressed, the quality of the video, where they're at, the year. That's the only thing that you connect to. Now build that out. If you got cable right now and you go to most stations, anything regarding, when you think about black people, all they got is reruns. 9 times out of 10, all you got is reruns. You got the Cosby Show still playing. You got the Cosby Show still playing. You got In the House. You got All of Us. You got One on One. You got Sanford and Son. You got Good Times. All you have is anything that's still based in the aspects of the past. And you chime into the aspects of the past because you're not present. So then the only thing now, of course, all you have is a complaint. See, man, we don't have this and we don't have this. And we so far behind, and you got to give somebody else the reason to why you're behind. You give somebody else the reason that you're behind. You're not where you want to be at. You're not doing what you want to do, just so you can stay ultimately inclusive. You stay in an all inclusion of that space. So then you look for the changes or the progressions as your emotional, to feed your emotional filler. Oh my God, first black astronaut. Oh my God, they got the first black astronaut, the first Supreme Court justice. Oh my God, we had the first black president. We had the first black president. He was in there, he didn't do shit for us. What was he supposed to do for you? Not on a general sense. See, the aspect that we have to break, the thing that you're breaking away from, to break away from inclusion, is to allow yourself to sit back and step out of the need to feel always included. The need that because you have to get to the root of that aspect with yourself. You're afraid you're going to miss something. Where is that coming from? Until you sit with the fact that when you was at home, whether you had a 2-parent household or you were a latchkey kid, what were those feelings and emotions that were displayed that you were not able to process? That unresolved. Until you resolve those aspects, until you sit with these aspects, you can't become present. You're always going to have something that can knock you off your balance. You're always going to have something that's going to knock you straight off of your square. Until I started to sit with those aspects, I could not understand the feeling that I wasn't getting. Why don't I feel this way when this happens? Why don't I feel excited when when I do feel excited, why does the excitement wear off so fast? Why does the nuance wear off so fast? Because I'm not present with the energy. I'm not present with it. I'm at a point with myself, I use that as breaking that example. For an example, if I close my eyes for longer than 30 seconds, I can see the flower of life, the tree of life. I can see the Metatron's cube. I can see those aspects. I can see how I'm sitting in the center of that aspect and that shit's spinning around me. I can see my auric field. This is when we get into the aspects. You have to do the basic work, or you're always going to connect it to something that's in your past. You have to do the basic work. The basic work now that we coming into is, I said it years ago when in my beginnings, even in my beginnings, you look at my older videos, and the transparency for me is always being transparent. Everything I remember, I could admit and accept that I said, yo, you got to kill your ego. I was one of the ones that was saying, I was chiming in, trying to fit in. Yo, you got to kill your ego, because I didn't know what the ego was. Yo, you got to do this to your shadow, because I didn't understand what the shadow was. Yo, you got to do this, this, and this on this day, and this day, and this day, because I didn't know what that shit was. It was easy for me to stay in that state of inclusion. And it gave me this feeling because it was still feeding off of my past, feeling like I needed to do something. I was still moving off of that emotional wound of feeling that I gotta be always in the mix. I gotta make myself seen. I gotta make myself heard. Until I came to a point to where I had to sit with that facility. I had to sit inside of that facility. I had to sit inside of that space. 1 second. I had to take the understanding that I had to sit inside of that facility. I had to sit in that facility, literally, figuratively, in the aspects of that spiritual nature. I had to sit inside of that facility. That facility I had to do work in. Until I sat inside of that facility, I cannot facilitate anything new. Until you sit into that facility and become present inside of that facility, sit inside of that facility, sit inside of that space, you're not going to move forward, because everything you're going to do is going to be connected to something that's going to keep you further separated from yourself. You have a choice. You have a choice. If what you're doing right now at this very moment is not working, you dig what I'm saying? It's not giving you the aspect. All it gives you is more questions. On the other end of that, all it gives you is stuff. All it gives you is more things to regurgitate. You can't throw it out, but why do you feel it's only giving you something based on regurgitating? It's not giving you that feeling. Because you're looking for that release. You're looking for, I need to get that release off. Am I really present inside of that space? When I'm listening to this person, what am I thinking about while I'm listening to that person? Am I really present? Or am I looking for them? Or am I so stuck in this impending need to validate my emotions, to validate things that I do not want to process, that I keep looking for certain things inside of this space and I'm not getting them? So automatically when I leave from it, man, that shit didn't work. That motherfucker don't know what the fuck they were talking about. So why do you keep going? Why do you keep going? What's the purpose of you getting that information if you don't know how to use it? When you really sit inside of that space. That's just like when I've talked about the aspects of, like, you can go get readings. If you're getting readings every other week, every other day, you're looking for somebody else to give you a reading. You're looking for somebody else to give you some spiritual information. You're looking for somebody else to give you that spiritual yo, I need to get what you're basically looking for is somebody to give you that fix. Because you're stuck in that state of inclusion. You're wanting something, the basis when I break down with my clients and we talk about the aspects of trauma bonding, you don't know what trauma bonding is. Trauma bonding in its simplest aspect, and we break things down in the simplest aspects. Trauma bonding is the aspect of the need to fill my voids of codependency. Something is missing, and I need something like-minded in the aspects of mentality. I need something that's in equivalent to the aspects of emotional, because you're looking for that energetic fix. So if this person is from my environment, if this person is populated inside of my environment, all that's going to happen inside of that environment is going to be regurgitation. That's where the regurgitation comes from. And then what you connect to it, your past aspects, I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to have this type of conversation. I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to do this. Think about how many times you say certain things of that nature. I always wanted to do this. I just don't want to be this, and I don't want to be that, and I don't want to be this. Until you sit with the factor of your roots of why that happened in the first place, nothing is going to change. And since you're so adequate on the changes, you're going to start looking for certain things. And since you're only looking for certain things, when you get what you want, put a pin right there. When you get what you want, what's the first thing that you do with it? You take that charge and you take that charge and you try to, okay, cool. I got this, I'm going to put that here. And this when we talk about mother wounds, this when we talk about maternal wounds, we talk about the fatherhood wounds, we talk about childhood trauma. These are the things that we're working on now inside of that space. That's where your shadow is so dense. Okay, cool. I never had this from my father. So I'm going to go I never got understanding or the space to develop and process my emotions and have protection from my father. So now in the aspects of trauma bonding, when I get into that relationship, when I I'm using myself in that case, when I look for that brotherhood, the brotherhood, I only can emulate what my father was. I only can emulate from what my father was. Based on what he had, what he did, what he didn't do, what he had, what he didn't have. 9 times out of 10, what grinded my gears with my father, but what he didn't do, I'm gonna go do over here. So now in relationships, now when I'm getting into a relationship, I'm gonna do everything my father didn't do. But in order for me to do everything that my father didn't do, I must also do everything that my father did. I must use the feelings, the resentment, whatever is resentment, insecurity, doubt, lack, that I must use that energy to do the don'ts. I must use that energy to gain what I didn't have. See how that works? So then I get stuck in that state of inclusion. When it came to the aspects when I was working in my mother wounds, in the beginning when I was working in my mother wounds, the aspects instead of trying to intellectualize it, I really looked at I had to look at all of my relationships and look for the first common narrative in all my relationships is that I was there. I was there. But who was there in that relationship? I know I was there, but which one of my eyes took the main role in that relationship? Which one of my eyes took the role in that particular relationship? The eyes are inside it. The eyes are your shadow. I can never. So now when I'm going into spaces, now the conversation, now when I'm taking that reflection, I'm looking back at that conversation in that relationship, and I'm listening to Shorty saying, now since I'm becoming present, I'm listening to what Shorty was saying. What was she really saying? Because the first couple weeks, first couple months, I was battling myself against proving myself that I'm not like the other guys. I'm not like the other guys. I ain't nothing like them. And instead of saying who I was, instead of me being able to sit and be present in reciprocity of saying who I was, I would use what I had or what I didn't have. I would use what I did or what I wasn't doing. So a conversation be like, I ain't never had a guy. I've had guys that all they want from me is sex. You know, they take me out. I'm listening. I'm projecting myself into the space. I'm trying to see myself inside of the space. Add dudes take me out, give me something to eat, treat me real nice. Then after they got what they wanted, they kind of just stopped doing what they were doing. Man, I ain't nothing like that. You see how me sitting in that space I'm projecting myself into that space. I ain't nothing like that. If we go out, we going out to like try to understand and know each other. If we doing this, this and this, her guard come down. Her guard come down. Now in her space, now we have to think, when you think about it in her space of herself, she's projecting herself into the space. She's projecting her inner child into that space. She's she's projecting, therefore it's hyper. Remember, I've talked about the state of hyper-adolescence. She's projecting herself into the space. She's projecting her inner child, which is your emotional development. Your inner child is emotional development, your emotional processing, those beginning stages. And in her hyper-adolescence is the actions that are manifested based on whatever emotional hasn't been a process. So if something happened to her and her inner child is wounded because of a trauma, we'll say, I'll use sexual trauma in that example. Sexual trauma is just more than just something physically happening. Sexual trauma is sacred energy exchange, any energy exchange, whether it's mentally, we have to identify whether it happened mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, or some of all of it in most cases. That's what she's projecting into that space. So if she has a sexual trauma, that she been through a sexual trauma, that means she's gonna try her hype in that state of hyper-adolescence. She's trying to reconcile what happened to her to make it right. So the thing that what she lost back then, she's trying to find inside of that space with me. So she only can vet the space based on how far she's went in with herself. So when that point comes up, 9 times when we think about the aspects of trauma bonding, that space comes up. Now it comes up in a bias. This is the regurgitative state. Now she's regurgitating what happened to her when she was 11, what happened to her when she was 12, what happened to her when she was younger, what she experienced, what she saw, what her and her mom went through, what her and her pops didn't do. All she's doing is regurgitating that. And if when I was inside of that space where I was still wounded, that's all I could share inside of that space, because we're both projecting. Neither one of us are present. So we're creating this collective space based on trauma. So the only way that this collective space can populate is energetically attaching to the aspects of that trauma, to those traumas. So now use an example. You saw your moms and your pops arguing all the time. So now in your space, now you read a post, all relationships have arguments. All relationships do not have arguments. Healthy relationships have discussions. It's unhealthy. It's the lower aspects of the unhealthy relationships that have arguments, disagreements. You can have a disagreement. That's natural. You can have but if I don't have conflict resolution, where did I learn conflict resolution from? My mom and pops would get in an argument. My pops would my pops would walk out the door. My pops would go for a walk. My pops would come back in the house. I'm only going based on what I've seen. My pops would come back into the house. My mom would go out the house. My mom would go shopping. All I would see with my mom, use this example, my mother would go shopping. She'd go get groceries, whatever it may have been. My pops outside tending to the yard. Come back in, my mom's quiet, my pops is quiet. My mom's cooks. My pops walks up to my mom. Hey, you get my smokes? She said, yeah, I got your smokes. Gave him the smokes. That was their aspect of, they weren't resolving anything. So inside of that space, that's how I learned resolution. My idea of resolution was to provide something. I must provide something inside of that space. So now my do's or my don'ts, to be preemptive, were to do the same shit. So now when I come into the space, I'm automatically looking for the problem. I'm looking for the problem from a surface level aspect in order for me to fix something inside of that space. So now this becomes that aspect when people thought, I love so hard and I go in, when I'm with somebody, I love them and I love hard and I give my all. You're giving based on trauma. You're giving based on trauma. This is how I prove to be a man. You're giving based on trauma. So then this is how we create this is how we create these loops. That's how you're sitting there. That's how 9 times out of 10 you keep creating that same keep creating this progression loop where the only time you feel that something happened is if something gives you a false sense of something progressed, something happened. As long as it doesn't matter, as long as it doesn't look like what happened to me in my past, I'm not gonna question it. So I don't become present. I don't learn the feeling. I don't sit with it. And then you build out your space. All that unresolved came into your consciousness. When you became conscious, you became aware of your unresolved. Your first step is to become aware of your unresolved, aware of your trauma, aware of it energetically. Because once you come into that understanding, the one thing that I learned, once you come into that understanding, everything changes in the network of how you respond. How you respond. You're okay with if you respond harsh. You might respond too harshly. You might respond too quickly one time. But you're testing it. You're understanding it. You're studying it. You're like, okay, cool. This did this, and this. How did that make me feel? And then this is when I'm gonna give you this example. This is when we look into the space. If you ever watched any show on TV, that every time they come to the therapist session, when they're showing like the person going to therapy, all you ever see is the person displacing their aspects of their feelings, their emotions, and then you hear them answering questions to them. Then you say, oh, so what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And then you see them get triggered. And then 9 times out of 10, it always fades out that scene. You never get to see the full actual interaction. I remember the only time I actually saw that full actual interaction was, I remember they showed it on Lucifer. When Lucifer was on Netflix, and every time that he got an answer that it fit you only listen to what fits, and then you go try to go use it. So now you watch Lucifer through the entire episode, keep trying to attach what he just got to something. That's the same shit you just keep doing until you're ready to sit within that side of that space. You keep going outside of yourself for a validation. Instead of like, you know what? I do need to sit down. Yeah. I need to stop. I need to acknowledge myself when I go to this certain space with myself in thought and go, you know what? I need to sit with that. And that's why that was me. That's why I created the space. Going through that process and breaking that inclusion loop is one of the major keys to your work. Going into that space and start breaking these inclusion loops, that inclusion loop in the psychological aspect. Let me drink some water real quick. That's that snap in between what happened and the result. That's that snap in, but that's that when we think about that synopsis, every time you triggered, that shit rides that wave, and then it goes to the other end and it creates another point because you're not snipping it. So this is when you start using this so we come all the way back to the beginning. You keep trying to use spiritual practices to alter that bypass to that loop. This is a human issue. This is a human aspect that I keep trying to bring into the spiritual space. It don't exist up here. It doesn't exist in this space. I can't bring fear into love. I can't bring the fears. I cannot bring fear into the love space, into that space that's based on love, that's based on absolution. I cannot bring what is fragmented into the space of absolute, to the space of the absolute. Can't do it. I must come to the point of neutrality, or to, when we talk about the heart space, I must bring it to the heart space, and now I must do the work in that heart space. Or all I'm going to keep doing is keep trying to say, oh, I'm going to open up my crown. I'm going to open up my, you opening up your crown chakra, but your root chakra shit. You're trying to open up your, you want to open up everything above the heart, and all of this shit is still shit. You ain't sat with the root. You ain't sat with that. And then that's when you say, this is when I tell people all the time, is like, if you go to somebody that says they're going to do chakra healing, do you guys what does the session go like? Do you guys have a consultation before and after? Do you guys talk about the things that came up? Do they give you an exercise? There's certain things that we now have to start actually going into as we're now breaking into this space, especially with, now here's the spiritual aspect. 2023 is the year of 7. 7 is a spiritual number. Pluto is now in Aquarius. Pluto transitions into Aquarius, meaning a lot of death and rebirth. So the energy we going through now, the age of Aquarius, is a lot of death and rebirth. What do you allow, what things have to die? It can't die until you get to the root of it. It won't die until you get to the root of it. You can't keep going outside and saying, man, I got these weeds in my yard, and you take the lawnmower, you sitting there and go cut the tops off all the weeds. Now my shit looks nice and pretty. Now I'm going to go sit in it. Because all it takes is what happens, the energy, now all that energy you just worked with goes into that space, the weeds grow back stronger than ever. Because you're not doing the root work. You're not getting to the root. You're now inside of the space where it's time to get to a lot of the roots of these issues. It's time for you to really get to the root of a lot of these issues. There's not a lot, like I remember one of the things that I'm told a lot of times from a lot of people is, there's not a lot of people actually talking about it. One of the things that I noticed in the aspects of contrast, since I work in the aspects of contrast to stay present, is I noticed people are talking about a lot of things or bring a lot of things to the surface, but we keep using the mystified sense of, yeah, you got to work with your shadow and work within. But no one can tell you the within. I can give you the within from my aspect. The within is that internal narrative, your human problems. Until you deal with that human shit, until you deal with your human problems, the roots of those aspects, and get to the roots, all you're going to do is you're not going to step into your spiritual space. You're going to step into another state of psychosis. You hear voices. Who are those voices that you are hearing? The ancestors and the spirits are speaking to me. What spirit and what ancestor is talking to you? I can tell you that when Oshun comes through, Oshun and Oya come through, 9 times out of 10 is using my grandmother or one of my aunts. I can tell you exactly what line that it comes through. If masculine energy comes through, masculine downs comes through, I can tell you it's usually it's usually a cousin or whatever. In the beginning, it was my cousins or whatever. It was one of my cousins. It was my cousin or a fat. Like, you feel me? The information. So now, as I worked inside of that space and I came into that space, now since I'm open, my heart space is fully open and I'm fully protected, and I go through my spaces, my disciplines. Now I can get information from anywhere. I can go hop off of this. What time is it? I got a session at 3 o'clock. I got a session at 2:30. Session I got to do at 2:30. After that, I can go on YouTube and watch Drink Champ. I'll be drawn to watch a Drink Champs episode or a podcast episode that in the human experience, I'll think that it has nothing to do with spirituality. Because I'm not stuck at, man, this shit ain't got nothing to do with spirituality. Why would I watch that? But there's a reason that I saw it come across my feed. Let me watch it. Damn, they said this, and this. I'm not looking for information to regurgitate. I'm looking for examples that align with the examples of myself to be able to simplify, for me to be able to break shit down. I no longer have spiritual conversations. All my conversations is, I no longer have to say things like, I need motherfuckers around me that we have spiritual conversations. What would the spiritual conversation be? Oh, we gonna talk about aliens? We gonna talk about conspiracy theories? I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to conspiracy theory. I never have. The only time that I'll listen to a conspiracy theory is like, have you broken that? Let me see if this person, did you break that down in a certain way? What is your personal perspective? Not a generalized factor. It's us. Are you present when you listening to that information? And as you start doing that aspect, then when you work in that aspect, then now you shift. That's the shift that you waiting for. That's the shift that man, y'all feel that energy shifting? And you like, man, you sitting there trying to convince yourself that you felt it, but you didn't really feel it. Or you're trying to convince yourself of feeling something more than what was actually there that you needed to feel. You wanted to feel it this way, and you lost access to what you needed. That's the game. That's the lineup of the game to it. But again, it's a process. It's breaking that state of inclusion. When breaking these states of inclusion with ourselves, what have I included myself in indirectly and directly? What do I keep going into spaces based on regurgitate? Do I go into these spaces based on the regurgitate, or do I really go into this space to actually go into reciprocity? You can tell when you go into a space of reciprocity, it makes you uncomfortable as shit. It makes you uncomfortable. It makes you start feeling the emotion. Now you start feeling the emotion. You start feeling the certain thoughts. You don't want to think that. You don't want to think this way or feel this way. That's what you start feeling inside of that space. It feels very, very, very it fucks you up. But that's where you need to sit at. You're not good. You're not balanced enough to sit inside of that space. But that space based on regurgitation, it's familiar. I don't look for familiar. That key is like, you're not looking for familiar anymore. I cannot build on what is familiar. But the only thing I can build based on what is familiar is more familiar. The only time that I can actually create something is based on something being unfamiliar. What is unfamiliar for me, what is unfamiliar to you is where you're going to learn. What is unfamiliar to you, and what I mean, give an example of being unfamiliar to you. One of the greatest things for me, with a lot of times my earlier sessions, almost everybody that I had a conversation with was older than me. I'm never gonna look a day over fucking 30. Moving around, I'm 39 now, but I'm not gonna look a day over fucking 30, because I'm in that state of constant renewal with my avatars, in a constant state of renewal. So 9 times out of 10, one of the biggest things that I had to listen to was, man, you younger than me. Man, woman, everybody in between, you're younger. The next thing that I had to deal with is like, man, you don't talk like niggas. Fuck you mean I don't talk like, what does a nigga sound like? You feel what I'm saying? I had to go, even in the aspects of me building out my space, I had to go through, I went through that point in process in order for me to build out the authentic space. I don't build my space on trying to be like everything else and try to subscribe to everything else and you have to think about it. Are you just something that you're trying to include yourself, or you're trying to follow, because here comes the truth. If you're really on the path, you realize that you become further and further separated. If you look at the history of, I want to be a teacher, I want to be this figure, 90% of those figures that are inside of that space, if we look at it from a historical point of view, shamans, Them niggas lived in the mountains somewhere. The wise men, the oracles, every movie you saw, them motherfuckers, you had to take a trip to go see them motherfuckers. You weren't coming around the corner to come see. You weren't able to come around the corner and see that motherfucker. You had to take a trip. You had to take that journey. So now if we take that and overlay that in your current space, it was all remember, it's energetic. So now look at that. Think about it in that space. Think about it in that sense. You think about it energetically. Damn. I'm having an issue. This is something that I just thought about it. This came. Damn. I'm having issues with myself based on some childhood shit or some shit when I was younger. How would that come to me? So then it changed my direction in the aspects when we think about elders. When you think about who the elder is. The elder was not based on age. The elder was not based on age. You seen that, and you saw that when the Golden Child came out. You saw that in fucking Avatar. You giving the example, damn, that motherfucker like they motherfucking 12. I gotta go listen to them? What's triggering you about What's triggering you about listening to that person? You feel like you missed something? Usually it's most of the times you feel like you missed the step based on where they're at. Because you're still looking at where you're looking at, once again, you're looking at where they're at and you're trying to project yourself as that person. You're projecting yourself into that person. You can tell when you're projecting yourself into a space with a person because 9 times out of 10, everything that you ask is coming from the aspect of you not taking accountability. So go back when I was talking about the aspects of like going into those relationships. Every conversation I was having was based on me not taking accountability for something. So I'm looking for somebody else they're willing to take that accountability for me. They're going to take that accountability. But once I came out of that, once I moved out of as I learned how to transition out of that space and now transmute, now it's a different aspect because I had to look at the relationships. You're going to have to look back at your relationships. Look back. And that's a process. That's a process. Stop looking for an answer and start looking at it's time to stop looking for that answer and start accepting that truth. The truth is its own purpose. An answer only serves a purpose, a position, a dissonance, a bias. So it's time for you to start, and then we shift. Especially when you're working with me, you can't come to me with, you need an answer. And I can tell, I have clients that I can tell when they're looking for an answer, and then, no, we're not looking for an answer. I hit them with something, leave them sitting in their shadow. That's one of my favorite things to do. That's always been my favorite thing to do. But now I own it. Not sit in your shadow, real quick. I'm going to leave you sitting in your shadow. I'm going to give you an exercise. The length of time it takes to do the exercise is on you. I've already done the exercise. I'm going to give you an exercise. The next time that we have another session or we come to another meeting, we come to the space, the first thing you're going to say, but like, I didn't do the exercise yet. You're projecting your guilt. All I'm going to tell you, not 9 times out of 10, I'm like, all I give you is the reassurance that when it's time for you to do the exercise, that's when you're going to be able to sit down and do it. And I'll give you the aspects. And then as we're going through that session, I'm going to give you the aspects of why it's important for you to do that exercise. That's all I'm there to do. That's all I'm going to do. That's all I need to do. Because that's what the space is for. I'm not here to give you, here, do this, to go get this. Nothing I do is not going to be, when I give it to you, what you do with it, here. I'm giving you it. Okay, what are you going to do with it? How did it make you? Because all you can come back to me and be like, how did it make you feel? Man, I cried for like 9 hours. Man, I was crying all day. Man, I was watching TV and I was watching a bunch of fucking I was watching sad movies all day. Even when I was watching it, I was watching fucking movies that was supposed to make me happy and I'm still crying. You're purging. Congratulations. Welcome to the purging phase. You have to accept where you're at. In order to break that loop of inclusion, you must accept where you are at. None of this is based on what you have, what you don't have. None of this is based on what you do and what you don't do. All of this is based on energetically who you are. Until we can sit down and look at energetically and understand the energetics of who I am, who you are, you're gonna keep doing the same thing. You'll be stuck inside of that loop. But as always, I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. Y'all know I mean that shit. Tacos. But yeah, you have a choice. Change is inevitable. Your choice, whether it's to remain in the pissy hallways of your survival or to invest in not cleaning the hallway, but understanding the root to how that piss got in the hallway in the first place. It's time to stop making choices of the hallway is pissy. It's not trying to look for why the hallway is pissy, where the piss trail came from, what the fuck that motherfucker is eating that made they piss smell like that, what behooved them to piss in the damn hallway in the first place. They ain't got no home training or manners. That's not what the fuck you looking for. You're looking for what led me to now being susceptible to the pissy hallway. You know what I'm saying? Your job is not to continuously look at why women do this, that, and the third. You dig what I'm saying? Just to acknowledge that, hey, they can't take leadership. Your part of your quest and your journey is to learn, what is my leadership based on? Is my leadership based on my purpose? Or is my leadership based on validation of my manhood? Is my mission, my skill set, my alignment based on my purpose? This is for the ladies. For my purpose? Or is it based on the validation of my behaviors and patterns? That's what you're doing. I can't make you do it. Nobody else can make you do it. But I know what I can do. When you're ready, I can aid you. But even that aid comes with a disclaimer. I will give you everything in front of you. I will show you what is to be shown. I only can show you what is to be shown. But I can't give you the answer. I can't give you the result because you have to take it first. You ready to take that jump? Above this video, the link to my website, my inbox is open. Drop a message in there. The one thing that I tell anybody when they come into my inbox, when you come into my inbox, before you come into my inbox, and I've given this game out, before you come into my inbox, take 6 deep breaths. Take 1, 2, 3. Do that 3 more times. And then introduce yourself in my inbox. Introduce yourself. Hello, Supreme Rising, Grand Rising, good morning. And then say what you need to say. Speak. Give yourself that space to speak. Because if you come into that space I was watching a reel before we get out of here, and it was I forgot the white dude name. He's a white comedian, and he said white people or white men, if they learned from how black people put the curse word after whatever is being said in the first place. White people put it before it, and it sounds totally different. A black person be like, this Asian motherfucker, now you intrigued. White man said the same thing. This motherfucking Asian, whoa. The key is, how are you leading yourself into your space? I can read it either way. And I can make a decision. I always have a choice. Your game, the main thing when you become present with yourself, you always have a choice. You got a choice whether, from the example, for the example, watching this video live or you come through and watch it later. You got a choice. That's your choice. I've already done what I needed to do. I've already displaced what I needed to displace, said what I scribed in my mind and pulled and download and worked on. I've already put it out. All I'm going to do is continue doing my work. What you have to stop doing is projecting yourself into, I wonder what he does after he hops off. I'm telling you what I do when I hop off. If you watch it, anything, those are the things that you start looking for. Those are the things that you start looking for. Those are the things that you start engaging with. Those are the things that will impact that change and that growth. I will never give you something that I have not done or I have not learned. It's not in me to do it because that's never been in me to do that. It's never been in me to do that. Even when I tried to do it in my earlier on, when you look, like if you go back and look at the earlier ones, even when I tried to do it, something would slap my ass and force me to be like, nigga, that's not what you down there to do. Stop. That's not the design that you're in. In order to do better, you must know better. Once you know better, it's time to apply so you can become better. I love you. We love us. Ashe.